Three young girls, three brutal endings, one neighborhood stained by silence. In Vienna's Favoriten district, the cobblestones remember. From 1988 to 2001, this ordinary corner of Austria's capital became the hunting ground for evil. Two of the monsters were caught, but one still walks free, and somewhere, someone still knows what happened to 10-year-old Christina Beranek.
Welcome to CrimeByte.
In this channel, we peel back the layers of those hidden realities, raw evidence, conflicting testimonies, and emotional pleas for help that too often come too late. By looking into these crime bites, you'll see firsthand how broken trust, systemic oversights, and chilling motives can converge into stories that rattle us to the core. If you find this exploration as vital as we do, be sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notifications button. Together, we can shine a light on the cases that demand attention, ensuring every voice, especially the silenced, finds the audience it deserves. In the heart of Vienna lies the 10th district, Favoriten. Known for its multicultural vibrance, bustling public housing, and hard-working residents, Favoriten embodies a gritty kind of normalcy. Generations have built lives along its tram routes, in its aging apartment blocks, and in its playgrounds where children's laughter once echoed freely. But from 1988 to 2001, that laughter was drowned out by horror. Over 13 chilling years, three young girls, each under the age of 11, were abducted, assaulted, and murdered in or around Favoriten. The crime struck with surgical cruelty, preying on the district's youngest and most defenseless. These weren't acts of random violence. They were calculated, deliberate, and utterly devastating. Though two of these tragedies were solved, thanks to the unforgiving precision of modern DNA analysis, one remains unsolved. One little girl, Christina Beranek, still cries out through cold case files and unanswered questions. Her killer has never been brought to justice. And for the families and for Vienna itself, closure remains a stranger. On October 20th, 1988, 10-year-old Christina Beranek vanished during a short walk home from school, a routine trip she had taken countless times without issue. She wore a pink wool sweater, clutched her school books close, and waved goodbye to a friend at the corner of Gudrunstrasse. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. The following morning, a tenant in a nearby housing complex made a grim discovery. Christina's lifeless body lay crumpled in a stairwell. Her school bag was torn open, contents spilling down the stairs like an eerie breadcrumb trail. She had been strangled with a cord, methodical, precise, and there were signs of sexual violence. No one had heard her scream. The police investigation was immediate and intense. Door-to-door interviews, school interrogations, and a massive canvassing of the district followed. But Vienna in 1988 didn't have access to the genetic breakthroughs of later years. DNA profiling was in its infancy, and though trace evidence was collected, it yielded no matches. Worse, there were no reliable eyewitnesses, no clear suspect. Just a pale little girl, brutally murdered in her own neighborhood, her killer melting into the gray city backdrop like fog. 35 years have passed. The stairwell has been repainted. Families have come and gone. But the wound in Vienna's conscience has never closed. Christina's case remains a haunting blank space, filed under unsolved, but far from forgotten. Just when the city began to heal, Favoriten was struck again. On a chilly afternoon in 1993, 8-year-old Nicole Strähle vanished after leaving a relative's apartment. She had been visiting family, an ordinary Sunday. She was last seen walking near the tram stop, bundled in a bright yellow coat. She never came home. Weeks passed before her remains were discovered in a wooded area on the outskirts of Vienna. Decomposition had advanced, but the cause of death was unmistakable: strangulation. The similarities to Christina's murder 5 years earlier were chilling. Same district, same victim profile, same calculated brutality. This time, forensic investigators were more prepared. DNA samples were gathered from Nicole's clothing and surrounding debris. But still, the killer remained one step ahead. The family was devastated. The public was shaken. Local TV stations ran nightly specials. Candlelight vigils lined the sidewalks of Favoriten. The sense of unease was no longer a whisper. It was a scream. Years would pass before DNA technology advanced far enough to identify Nicole's murderer. When it finally did, the result was as jarring as it was revealing. a convicted sex offender already incarcerated on unrelated charges, had left his genetic fingerprint behind. But in 1993, no one knew. And the realization that this predator had gone unchecked for years only intensified the scrutiny on investigators and the guilt of a city that hadn't listened to its children's silence. Still, Nicole's murder had now been solved. Her family, though shattered, had a name to assign their rage. Christina's family did not, and by then, another young girl had gone missing. Between Nicole Strähle's tragic death in 1993 and the next known attack, Vienna existed in a fragile psychological state. The district of Favoriten, once defined by its resilience and immigrant unity, now lived under an invisible curfew. Parents walked their children to school with clenched jaws. Strangers were met with narrowed eyes. The similarities between the two cases had not gone unnoticed. Two little girls, two brutal strangulations, two crime scenes within walking distance of each other. Whispers of a serial predator gripped the public imagination, but without a solid link, no DNA matches, no pattern of contact, no surviving witnesses, the cases remained separate in the eyes of law enforcement. And so Vienna waited, uneasy, watching until 8 years later, the nightmare returned. On April 21, 2001, 10-year-old Michelle Anschober went missing in Vienna. Her day had started like any other. She had gone shopping with her mother. Then, on her way to a friend's house just blocks away from Favoriten, she disappeared without a trace. Within hours, search teams were deployed. Flyers flooded the streets. Her face made national headlines. But it wasn't until days later, when Michelle's body was discovered in a garbage bag near a train embankment, that the city's worst fears were confirmed. She had been sexually assaulted, strangled, her remains wrapped tightly, as if the killer had done it before. This time, science had the upper hand. DNA collected from Michelle's body and the materials used to conceal her provided a direct hit in the database. Within weeks, a suspect was arrested. Another man with a history of child abuse. He confessed, the case was closed, but a darker realization began to take shape. Two of Favoriten's girl murders had been committed by different offenders. In Christina Beranek's case, still unresolved. The question emerged, was there a third predator? The 2000s ushered in a new era of investigative possibilities. Cold cases from around Europe were being reopened as touch DNA and mitochondrial sequencing revolutionized criminal justice. Both Nicole's and Michelle's cases had been solved using these tools, years after their deaths. But Christina's? The evidence collected in 1988 had degraded. No full DNA profile, no usable hair follicle, no preserved skin cells beneath her fingernails. The cords used to strangle her were too contaminated. The stairwell had been a shared space, tainted with dozens, perhaps hundreds, of overlapping touch signatures. In short, the science had arrived too late, but investigators didn't give up. In 2010, Vienna police launched a renewed appeal. Posters of Christina's school photo were reprinted. A reward was offered. Anonymous tips trickled in. Old neighbors, now grown, recalling strange men who had lingered too long outside the school gates. Yet every promising lead ended in dead ends or inconclusive matches. Still, within the corridors of Vienna's Kriminalpolizei, there was one lingering belief. Christina's killer was local. He lived there, walked among them, and possibly still did. By 2012, with only one case left unsolved, Vienna's criminal analysts began looking not just at evidence, but at behavior. Criminal profilers pored over every detail of Christina Beranek's murder, comparing it with the known MOs in Nicole's and Michelle's cases. Michelle's killer had been impulsive, opportunistic, careless enough to leave behind damning DNA. Nicole's assailant, more meticulous, calculating, but Christina's murder stood apart. There had been no attempt to hide her body, yet the scene was organized. The killer took no items of clothing, no trophies. The cord used to strangle her was deliberately knotted, not a panicked improvisation. Experts concluded this might not have been the first time the perpetrator struck, or the last. Psychologists noted the killer's likely comfort within the apartment complex. Was it a resident, a maintenance worker, a family friend? One chilling phrase began surfacing in police memos. The predator lives among them. Time may pass, but grief embeds itself in a place. Neighbors still remember the panicked flyers stapled to lampposts. They recall the nightly whispers, the parents refusing to let children walk alone. For some, Favoriten was never the same after 1988. Christina's classmates, now adults, still gather once a year. Some light candles. Others refuse to speak of it. Nicole's and Michelle's families, after years of agony, finally received justice. But Christina's mother? She still leaves the porch light on. It's been over 3 decades since Christina Beranek's murder, and yet science now offers tools never imagined in 1988. Hair strands no longer need roots for sequencing. Touch DNA can be extracted from the seams of clothing. Artificial intelligence can scan archived crime scene photos for patterns missed by the human eye. In 2023, Vienna's cold case unit reopened Christina's file. Why? Because a dusty plastic evidence bag, one marked CB88 cord, had been re-examined using vacuum metal deposition. This allowed latent fingerprints to appear where smudging had previously concealed them. It wasn't a full print, but it was partial enough to spark hope. The problem? No match in the European databases. The cord was real, the killer still nameless, and yet, one hit. One match in the next 5 years could finally unmask Favoriten's long-hidden predator. Christina Beranek would be 46 years old today. She might have been a mother, a teacher, a painter, a poet. Instead, her story remains a scar on Vienna's memory, a case that shattered innocence and still whispers of a predator hiding in the fog of time. As Vienna evolves, as trains pass Favoriten's tram stops and new generations rise, the question still lingers in the alleys and stairwells. Who killed Christina? Her file remains open. Her name remains etched in Vienna's silence. And her killer? Still out there. It's been over 35 years since Christina Beranek took her final walk home. Her case remains Vienna's most haunting unsolved murder, a shadow over an entire district, a silence that speaks louder with each passing year. If you know something, anything, now is the time. Justice for Christina is not a footnote, it's a promise. Was Favoriten home to one killer or more? Could new technology finally unmask the ghost hiding in plain sight? Watch this space, because we're not letting go, and neither should you. Comment below. Do you believe the killer was someone Christina knew, or a stranger who slipped away under the city's watch? Like, subscribe, and tap the notification button for more fearless stories that refuse to fade into history.